Oh, Igwe. Your brother, Alex, brought me to the station to head up neuromod research. I have one, but no aptitude template. Was saving it, but... well, now might be best. Here, I'm sure you could make better use of it.
You alright?
So I've just finished playing Prey, and I want to share my thoughts on the game with you guys. The first point that I'm going to address, and as always I'm going to start with the negative points, is that the first playthrough of the game is going to feel hard even if you play the game on easy. Simply because the game is complex, the game doesn't hold your hand, and it's very old school in many ways. If I had to compare it to games, I would compare it to games like Deus Ex 1, System Shock 1 and 2. So we're talking super old school in many ways. Of course, it does feature a lot of things that those games didn't have, and a lot of things that simplify the gameplay, but they did try, obviously, to not hold your hand too much as a player, and for me personally, I don't find holding my hand a bad thing in games. I don't know. I mean, I guess to some extent, but this might have been too little for my taste. Now, the second point that I want to address is actually related to the first one. If you're doing quests, oftentimes you're going to get confused, the solutions will be unclear. And I've actually had times when I would just roam the station and just do stuff and try to figure out what I'm supposed to do next, how I'm supposed to initiate the quest, because the quest just gives you a generic information on what you need to do, but it doesn't actually tell you literally what you need to do. For example, I was in outer space, in front of the space station. There was a hatch that I needed to get to, and I needed to unlock it somehow. And there was no prompt or anything, so I was wondering what to do. I started hitting it and flying around it, and just by chance I hit one part which I broke off. And then so I decided, okay, this part was present 3 more times, I'll break those off, and then I figured it out. But the thing is that at first when I went I just thought that maybe I'm going and trying to address the problem from the wrong side. So I got back inside the ship, tried to see if I can go on the other side of this hatch and try to unlock it from the inside. It was just, it's a mess. And unfortunately, there are several quests like that that are really unintuitive, and it's going to feel sometimes like you have to solve a cryptic task. I know there are going to be people who are going to tell me, no man, this is super easy, you're just stupid. Yeah, maybe I am, but they have to account for stupid people too. And they have to make the quest so, at least if I want to, make it so if I want to, the game gives me more instructions. Some games do this, they give you hints, they allow you to set it up. Because for me, this is frustrating. If I spend 40 minutes running around to the fucking station trying to figure out what to do, it's not good design. Even if it's actually my fault. They just have to account for all kinds of players because we are all paying the same. Anyway, next step is that the combat never became fun for me. So you might be just starting the game, and you might be right at the end game and be much stronger. Essentially you're not going to enjoy the combat. At least that's my experience with it. The combat just feels unintuitive. The enemies are really annoying, and the weapons are underpowered. Just the whole thing doesn't work well for me. Also, the skills never give you the feeling like you're a total badass. I guess you're not supposed to be, but you kind of are. I'll get to that. But in any case, the combat just feels underwhelming for me. I mean, you can't even aim down the sights of the weapons. If you give me a first-person perspective and I'm holding a handgun, my natural instinct as a player is to hold the right mouse button and zoom in on the iron sights of the gun and, aim down the sights. This is not working. This is not possible. The only thing you can do is just use the gun normally without aiming down sights. Like in games, for example, like the first Deus Ex, you could aim down sights there either. And that just feels like it shouldn't be that way. To me personally, that felt very out of place and weird in 2017 to have this kind of shooting design, shooting mechanics. But for some that might be, again, nitpicking. I think that this just could have been done better. Having good gunplay is actually essential to a first-person shooter game. And yes, I know it is an RPG, but it is also a shooter at the same time. You are in a first perspective. You do a lot of shooting, especially later on. Even if you don't want to, you're forced into fights at times. So, stealth is not only always an option. And when it is an option, it's not a good option. It doesn't work that well, and it doesn't feel good at all. It really feels stupid. So, moving on to the next part is backtracking. One of the huge problems of the game. You are going to be running up and down that space station. It's just atrocious. And at first, when you're limited to just a few parts, because you need to basically unlock your access from each point to the next, it's okay, you know, because it isn't that big, the whole place. But later on, when you need to go from one end to the other and then back, and you have like 2 to 3 loading screens if you don't take the possible path through outer space, which is often shorter. But I'll get to that. But you need to unlock that, obviously. So usually just these long loading screens, because the game has pretty long loading times. Not as bad as other games, but still, you know, quite long. It's just really annoying that you have to backtrack. I don't know why they did this. It feels to me like they were stretching the content, just trying to squeeze more hours out of it. It's really annoying. The next point is hacking. I did not enjoy hacking. I mean, at first it felt like it's okay because it's actually a minigame which is not hard. You're almost never going to fail it because it gives you enough time for you not to feel pressured. But it's just, you know, it's boring. And the truth is that I can't personally think of any hacking mechanic which would be better or more interesting than that. So my suggestion would be, let me upgrade the skill, and as long as I have the proper skill level, I just automatically hack it. Like I click it and the thing says hacked, you know, gives me like a short sequence to see, or maybe something like that. Or not even that, just hacked, unlocked, boom, that's it. That's all I want to do. And this is not the case here. It's just annoying. And also it has this really annoying music, which is also for some reason louder than the rest of the game a little bit. All in all, really did not enjoy the hacking. I think that many games get it wrong nowadays. Just make it a simple, clean mechanic, so we don't have to waste time with things we don't enjoy. That's the truth. I've never met a person who's played Skyrim and unlocked boxes, or has played Deus Ex or this, and I really like Deus Ex actually. And still, after you hack something 5 times, you're done. These mini games are so simple, you do not want to do them anymore. I've never met a person who said the best part of the game was the mini games when you hack, unlock, or anything like that. That's just not gonna happen. Take it away. So the next point I want to address is that through these mechanics and other similar ones, the game feels too slow. You're going to constantly be looking at loading screens, constantly be dealing with hacking. You know, you're going to be doing all of that, and it just feels at some point that you've played 4 hours and you've made 2 quests. Well, I'm exaggerating, but you know, if it can be really just a few quests. It just feels like it's advancing way too slow, which is just not right for my taste personally. I do like a bit of rhythm, a bit of speed. And oftentimes, especially at the first half of the game, you're just walking around with nothing happening. And if you backtrack, you know, some of these alien creatures, which are called the Typhon, are going to respawn, so you gotta kill a few of them. And yeah, the mimics make it kind of curious with how they become objects. That's kind of interesting. But you know, it kind of feels like it's boring a lot of times. So that's something that I did not approve of, obviously. Now, the next point I want to address is that the game is buggy. And it's not really an open world game, so these bugs are something that I'm not used to seeing. And there were quite a few. They were, you know, they're not bad. Luckily, I haven't hit on anything game breaking, although I read on the internet that on the first version there was actually a game breaking bug related to if you use the alien superpowers too much, you might have it, and it would corrupt your save game. And even if you load a save game which is from a lot earlier, once you reach a certain point, it would corrupt it again. Luckily, that didn't happen for me, so I'm glad. I think it's not even possible. I think it's been patched out now, at least so they say. But you know, there were still graphical glitches which were just really funny, like my hands suddenly stretch out like I'm being sucked in by a black hole. At one point, you need to hold F in order to pry a door open, and if you do this while you have the special device on your head which scans enemy organisms, and there at the same time happens to be an enemy on the other side while you're opening the door, you're going to enter into a scan which will then freeze your character completely. So basically, you pry the door open, the enemy is in front of you, your visor is scanning, and you're stuck. And from that point, you can do nothing. You can't even pull out the menu. You have to essentially kill the game. So the good news is that the game auto saves pretty quickly, and it does allow you to quick save as well. So you're very unlikely to have a big problem with that. And I've tested this twice, and it always happens. So that means that this bug is persistent. Don't do it. If you're going to be force opening any doors, you know, when they are without electricity and stuff, be sure not to use the visor, because that will basically get your game to to be stuck, although the game actually isn't. It's just like all the characters stop moving. Yours, the enemy, everything stopped moving, but it's not like it's frozen. It does feel like ambient sounds are normal, and other stuff seems to be normal. You know, you have a different feeling when your game completely freezes up. This is not the case. Also, these voice recordings that you find, sometimes some of them would just glitch out and repeat a word. Like if you start listening to a random voice recording you found, and then suddenly something story relevant happens, and that interrupts the previous voice recording. So somebody talks to you, and then after they finish talking, the voice recording will reset and start over, but it's gonna be stuck on one word. For example, it's gonna just say anyway, 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 like that. And the way I managed to remedy that was when I went into the game, you know, into the game menus and started a different voice recording, which would again interrupt this one. And after that, the first one would start over again, and if you're lucky, it wouldn't loop. If it does loop, you repeat 2-3 times and then it fixes itself. So it's not so bad, but these are small things that stack up and annoy. The next point is that ultimately the game failed, especially at first, because at first you're unaware of what's happening. The story is just very convoluted and intentionally confusing, but you do get a feel for what's going on at first. We've seen similar stories, and I personally like that, but I'll talk about that in the second part of this video. But the thing is that the game will be boring for you at first. You don't have a real motivation to see what's happening. You're just being guided by a robot, essentially, and you don't know what your motivation is at this point. Like I said, the quests take just too long to deal with, a lot of loading screens, very little combat. The combat itself is boring. The first section of the game felt really boring for me, and I was actually having a hard time making myself keep playing. So that's something that, you know, that is pretty bad. That's not a good sign for me. And what I really hated it, like I said, the loading screens are long, but not only are they long, there's 2 of them every time. So you see one loading screen with a scale. That scale was going to fill up all the way. And then you're going to see a different loading screen, which is also going to kind of spin around for a few seconds and then let you in, which could easily take another 10-15 seconds. So it just makes the waiting more annoying for you, because between these 2 loading screens, usually I'd hear like a small sound effect or something. So it gives me the feeling, aha, the game's starting. I get ready to play, and then hop, another loading screen. So that really sucks, especially because I'm usually killing time by looking at my phone or doing something else, and then I hear the noise for a second. I turn to my PC ready to play, and it's like, fuck you, I got you. You get to play a little more. I mean, you get to wait a little more. So 2 loading screens, annoying. The next bigger point I want to make is that this game is not scary. And okay, I mean, it's not a horror game, but it feels like sometimes it's trying to be. For example, especially at the beginning, when you have very few monsters and your weapons are really underpowered and you feel like it's dangerous for you, the game does try to scare you. Also, when monsters appear, the music changes into a very unpleasant music, which is supposed to, at least that's how I interpret it, supposed to instill fear in you, to stress you while you're fighting. Like, it's really bad, this monster's gonna kill you, what are you gonna do, what are you gonna do? That's what the music's telling me. It's not working well for me because the game itself is not scary, but it feels like it wants to be scary, and that's something that I'm confused about, and that's not a good way to do it. The next point is that many alien abilities, because later on you get some alien abilities, some of which are really cool, but then others are really shitty and useless. You invest so many skills in them, and you figure out that they're really not working well, and they're not really useful at all. So that's very disappointing, and that you know, when you have so many skills, I understand that they can't all be winners, but there's so many of them that are absolutely redundant. So I don't like that at all. The next thing is that turrets in the game, there are different turrets, and these turrets you can position them, you can move them around, and they shoot at Typhon. You can even upgrade them so that they're fortified and have higher armor, you know, higher defense. However, these turrets are absolute crap. First of all, the bigger Typhon, take them out in one hit. They don't break them in one hit, they just take a bit of their health. But most of these Typhon, or these alien organisms, attack with attacks which push you around. And as soon as the turret is knocked over, it kind of closes in on itself and stops fighting. So the Typhon disable the turret almost instantly. Just the smallest guys have no chance against it, and these guys you kill easily with a wrench anyway. And the worst part is that if you in the first section of the game, when you don't know it, you're gonna because at first you don't see that you have these alien abilities. They're available to you later. And in the first sections, you're gonna be positioning turrets all over the place. Because you see a turret, you're like, hey, why not? You know, I'll put it here because these monsters respawn. Next time when I come, the turret's gonna offer some support, and it does, but it offers very limited support. But the thing is, as soon as you start upgrading alien abilities, the turrets also see you as an enemy and they start shooting at you. Now, most of your abilities don't push, and the ones that do, you need to get really close to, which is just bullshit. So you end up creating your own enemies. And some might say, oh, that's really intricate, that's really original, I didn't see it coming. But for me, that just feels annoying. Yeah, because these turrets are shit anyway. The only reason why I put them up is because, well, they're there, it's a freebie, I'll take it, you know. That's like when an ugly girl's flirting with you and you think to yourself, okay, you know, I'll flirt back because I got nothing better going for me right now. But the point is that it doesn't work well. So the next point I will address is the fact that the story feels underdeveloped. They're working with a generally very original story. I mean, I've seen it many times, but it still is something that I enjoy. It's a story that makes you think. It's a story that keeps you nice and confused, so you don't know what's going on. And what happens here is, however, at some point, it feels like they didn't do more with it. They had a great story to work with, and they didn't do a lot more than they had. I don't want to spoil it for you, so if you play the game, you're gonna figure it out for yourself. But the game actually works with keeping you confused. So they want you never to be 100% sure who to trust, what's going on, etc., etc. And then in the end, you know, you have like of course, you have like a twist in the story and stuff like that they intentionally make, which, however, is very weak. And that's my problem. You know, they could have made more out of the story. Let's say that. A lot more. I was just expecting more. They were building it up. They have these weird cinematics in between. And these cinematics are just really bad. You can't really tell much. You hear like 2 words and I see that they're supposed to confuse you. You're supposed to try to get any information out of them. But even after having played the whole game twice, I actually don't see the logic in them. Like, I understand what is happening roughly, but I don't think that they work at all. I don't know why they put them there. They could have as well not put any cinematic. It would have had the same effect. Now, the next point that I want to address is that there are too few weapons in this game. There's just a few weapons. That's it. And most of them are underwhelming. They're really crappy. One of the more original weapons you get at the beginning is the glue gun, which shoots these glue balls, and you can shoot it at walls and stuff and plug holes where there's fire coming out and gas leaks and stuff. And then you can also shoot them at walls and climb on top of this goo because it hardens and it kind of makes like a step for you. But that's really just really impractical to use, and I actually never found myself using that. I think just once or twice at the beginning, and it just doesn't work well. It glues up the enemy so you can, you know, freeze them so they don't jump around as much, and then smack them nicely. But it's not, you know, it's useful only at the beginning of the game. Later on, use it a few times maybe, but ultimately it's again just, you know, it's no portal gun. Let's say it like that. It doesn't feel like such an original weapon after you've tried it for a while. And the rest of the weapons are just as crappy, you know. The only reason the second weapon I think was, well, if you don't count the proper handgun, you have you get a weapon which stuns, which is again absolutely pointless for me. And ultimately, you know, it's only useful if you want to get some of the endings and you try to be non-lethal as much as possible. So it's not good. I'm not happy with it. Crafting in this game is a pain, especially gathering materials. You see, you get to grab in this game pretty much anything that's not bolted down. You can grab and put in your pockets. You grab a piece of paper, you grab a banana peel, everything you can find you can stash. And that's really bad because in these games I'm usually a hoarder, and of course you have a limited inventory so you can't carry everything. And you need to get to these special machines which are going to turn all this shit into actual materials. And then you need another machine from which you can craft stuff like ammo and stuff like that. And that just, you know, that means that you're going to be walking around with your pockets full of crap, fighting monsters until you get to the proper machines. This is alleviated a little bit by giving you a special type of grenade, which has a recycling effect. So you dump all your crap on the floor, put a grenade on top of it, the grenade creates materials out of this stuff. So that helps, but it's still not very good. But okay, you know, I'm nitpicking here. I mean, they had to maybe think of something. It would have been weird if the place was covered in usual resources. But maybe they could have made at least some skills that allow me to break down stuff myself, or have like a portable machine which can break stuff and needs a battery maybe. I'm just thinking as I go along. But there are ways to make it a bit more convenient for you. So the next point is that the crafting itself, like I said, is slow. If you wanna craft gun ammo, handgun ammo, you gotta select the recipe. Then you gotta click once on craft, which will make all your materials appear in the right place. Then you click again, which will then suck in the materials, create one box of ammo, and you do it again. And imagine when you need to do this 10, 15, 20 times. It can be really time consuming. It annoyed me. Alright, so that's pretty much what it was when it comes to the bad sides. I'm going to talk about the good now because, the game is not bad ultimately. But it does have these weaknesses which make it really hard for me to decide whether I like it or I don't like it. So I'm really somewhere in the middle, which is kind of surprising. I thought I would like it much more. But with the positive sides, the first thing is that the game is very long. So you're going to get your money's worth in time. But that time is padded by making you walk from one end of the station to the other, having very long loading screens, confusing you intentionally so you don't make the quest too fast. So it's kind of a plus minus thing. You decide for yourself. I actually found that the game is that these things make the game exceptionally long, and that's actually for me it felt like it was overdue when it ended the first time. Now, if you don't play it for too long every time, and once you know what's going on, so your second playthrough, and you're not as confused, the game actually improves dramatically, and you're gonna get the game more, and it's gonna feel more interesting when you read these codex that you find and these messages and stuff, and everything is gonna start to sink in, and it's actually more enjoyable on the second playthrough if you have the nerves and the desire to play it a second time. It's easier, it's faster, and it works better, and it's much better for doing side quests as well that you didn't do the first time. That's how I did, because at some point I was just like, fuck them the first time. I'm not gonna do the side quests. I don't feel like walking around this fucking station any more than I have to. And yeah, so if you don't play the game for too long bursts, rather like you take breaks in between, it's gonna be more fun. Another thing is that the game has a very strong start. At the beginning of the game, when you just, start and everything looks in one way and suddenly it turns upside down, it's all very interesting. It's all very what's going on here. And for me, that was very, very enticing. I thought this story is gonna kick ass. Little did I know that it ultimately didn't, but it was still an okay story. It was not a bad story. It wasn't a particularly good one, but it had a really strong start, and that's really important to get me interested. And also the main reason why I finished the game the first time, which I'm glad I did, because then the second time I actually had a lot more fun with the game. But it's generally not a good sign when the player is kind of undecided whether he's gonna just stop playing and give up on this game because it's not fun for him anymore. But the story was so curious for me at that point that I actually went on just for the story, and that's why I also didn't do side quests and stuff. I decided to skip that stuff. So I also liked the main characters, especially the protagonist, but I also liked his brother. I also liked the robot, which is essentially your own voice again, and that's also a good thing. We have lots of side quests, and if you wanna spend time doing them, you're gonna get your money's worth in time. And in terms of how variable they can be, it's just, it's a lot of work to get them done. Now, another thing that I liked is that the game had generally great performance. I had really, really good frame rate, everything on max. I have a mid-range PC and an i5 processor. I have a AMD Radeon 290 3XOC card. So that's 8 gigabytes of RAM. So that's very much mid-range, and I had solid 80 to 90 frames on everything maxed out. The game looks great. So from that point of view, absolutely well done. No crashes. The game did not crash for me, except that one time when it froze and I was forced to kill the process. But the game essentially on its own did not crash. It just made it impossible to continue playing at that point. But the performance was good. I'm happy with the performance. It was well optimized. The frame rate was steady. Keep up the good work. Great job. Now, the next thing is that the graphics themselves were really beautiful. The game is really nice. The character models are kind of weird, and they look more like they're in a comic book, and they you know, they look weird, they behave weirdly, but it feels to me like, and obviously you're gonna have very little interactions with actual human beings, so they didn't put much love into those, and they were more concentrated on making the animals, the enemies, not the animals, the Typhon look more interesting. So, you know, that's okay. It's kind of a stylized choice, so I'm not gonna go and bash it. But the graphics, all in all, were really beautiful. The voice acting is actually great. I can't complain at all. All the characters sound good. Even the ones with weird dialects and stuff and accents, they all did a good job.
Allow me sometimes. Please, right at the neck. Just look for the marks. It was harder when I was doing it myself. Oh God, I can breathe again. And feel my legs. I still have some spots in the eye, but those should clear up. Thanks, Morgan. Let me catch my breath. Make sure I can stand, and I'll be all right. Now. I can walk. Thanks, Morgan. I was fighting to breathe there for a bit. I don't know what I would have done without you.
We have 3 different endings, so plenty of motivation to replay the game. And you have, I mentioned before that you get these alien skills, and the alien skills are, some of them are really cool. For example, the one where you become a mimic and transform into different stuff. At first, I assumed that this skill was for stealth purposes, so you transform into a cup and roll around, but all the enemies recognize you immediately and attack you. But that's not what it's for. It's actually, there are these doors and places where you can't get in, but there's like a tiny opening somewhere, like a counter opening where you could put your hand through. But if you transform into a small cup, you could go in as a cup and then transform back into a human being, loot the place, open it from the inside easily. So that's actually pretty cool. I was surprised that this, at first I thought it's just a wasted upgrade, but it actually is really cool. And later on, when you level it up even more, you can turn into one of those friendly robots, the operators, and then you can even fly around with it as this thing. So that's really cool. I actually used it for one quest to get into a tube where I just couldn't figure out how to get. And speaking of which, the game actually offers, similar to how it was in Deus Ex, and I mean the modern Deus Ex, has several solutions. So you can hack your way through a door, you can try to move something heavy to the side, and then that opens a passage. You can open a hatch and get in there. You know, you have several solutions oftentimes. Not often enough, but still, you know, it's good. Not by far not as many such as in Deus Ex, but it's still something that I just really like, that they enable the player to play the game however he likes in most cases. And another thing that I really love is that there were no breathing bars. So that means that when you're in outer space, when you're in a place where there's no air purification or whatnot, you don't have a limited time you can explore. You know, you have your suit keeps you alive. There is no limitation. You can fly in outer space all day. And that is great. There's nothing more annoying to me than a fucking time limit. That just makes me run around, collect air bottles or whatnot, something like that. It's just really annoying, and I'm glad they opted out of that, because I hate it. And that's pretty much it, all in all. There's nothing else to say. The game is fun. The second playthrough, the first playthrough, I had a hard time, like I said. If you give it a chance, keep an open mind, and be prepared for some old school problems that for some reason made it into this new generation of some games. But once you get the hang of it, it's definitely an interesting journey and worth exploring. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.